Hey everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Hip Hop Reminiscence. I'm your host, Joe Rosen, with my co-host, Fuzz Jackson. Fuzz, tell him what's up.
Greetings and salutations. I am Fuzz Jax. Joe, glad to see you, bud. Welcome, everyone.
Great to see you with the new microphone. You're lifting it up. your wall matches your shirt. I love it.
Yo, right?
It's great. It's great. We are continuing the Rapper Spotlight series this week. We did a big one last week with Public Enemy. This week we're doing Black Sheep. We're starting the Native Tongues with the last group from the Native Tongues. And we're getting into that, right? So without further ado, Fuzz, let's go. Let's get into it. I'll give some background. I'll get your thoughts, and then we'll get into the segments.
Yes, sir.
All right. Black Sheep. They are, and this was a little confusing to me. I had to do a little digging on this, okay?
Okay.
Andres Drez Vargas Titus. He is 56 years old. And William McLean. I did not know Mr. Long's name was William McLean. I did not know that. They are from Queens, New York. That is how they identify. They met in North Carolina. Sanford, North Carolina as teenagers, and then they eventually both relocated to New York. They are part of the Native Tongues Collective, De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers. Jungle Brothers was the first one. They were the first hip-hop group to perform on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno after Johnny Carson left. Did not know that. This I did know, but not to the extent of what's going on. So we always talk about Wu-Tang as what they did and, how unique it was in hip hop that, they recorded as a group, but they did their own thing with different labels. Black Sheep did that too. And I did not know that to the extent of what they did, but I did know it a little bit. The group's relationship with its label, Mercury Polygram, allowed Drez to establish a boutique label through which he could sign his own acts. Mercury distributed the imprint. It was called One Love through Polygram's independent label sales division. But there was only one full-length title ever released by a group called The Legion.
The Legion, yes.
Titled Theme and Echo equals Krill. Theme plus Echo equals Krill from 1994. I do remember hearing about that. It certainly didn't get as much play, right? Because the Legion didn't have as much success as Method Man and RZA and and Raekwon and those guys. So I think, but I did remember hearing that. The group broke up pretty quick. The group broke up in 1995. Even though they did a bunch of I shouldn't say studio albums, but they did a bunch of albums afterwards under the name of Black Sheep, which was really Drez featuring Mr. Long at times. In 2008, the single "The Choice Is Yours," the remake, was ranked number 73 on VH1's 100 Greatest Hip Hop Songs of All Time. There were two real studio albums, Fuzz. Two. Mm-hmm. A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing in 1991 that went gold. Nonfiction, which we've talked about on this show many times, 1994. 8WM Novocaine in 2006. Again, mostly Drez, and I believe this was an online release. From the Black Pool of Genius in 2010 and Tortured Soul in 2018. We're going to really focus on the first two albums here, the ones released in the 90s.
Right.
And that's when Black Sheep was big. Fuzz, your initial thoughts on the group known as Black Sheep?
Man, my thoughts on Black Sheep probably would have to be they were so fucking cool, man. Like, right? like Drez had when I first heard Drez, the swag, man, like that is in my personal opinion, that is the true meaning of a swaggerific MC. He could talk that shit. He dressed fly. He had the attitude. He just sounded so confident, especially on the Sheep and Wolf's Clothing album. His flow, Drez probably has one of the most confident flows ever. Like, it's so, like, when you listen to the album now, you're like, damn, he had so much confidence and so much swagger with his bars, man. He was definitely stood out from what the native tongues were doing. His flow stood out, and that's what made me, just swag when it came to Black Sheep. And Mr. Long was smooth as fuck on the beats, bro. He was so smooth and slept on.
Confidence is a good word for them. I like that. So, you know what my first memory was? So I loved Black Sheep. 1991,
What's
it
that?
came out my freshman year of college, right? Like I remember it like it was yesterday.
Right.
The first song was Flavor of the Month, right? That was their first single. Then The Choice Is Yours came out. And that, I mean, those were the two big songs, big releases off the album. But I remember the first Snoop song I ever heard. And it was the off the what was it? Deep Undercover. What was this song called? Help me out. It was before
Deep cover,
Deep Cover.
187.
Yeah. That was the first Snoop song I ever heard. The first song I ever heard with Snoop on it. Excuse me. It wasn't a Snoop song. It was a Dr. Dre song, right? And then Nothing But a G Thing came out and Dre Day came out. And he was on The Chronic, obviously, before Doggy Style got released in 1993. When Snoop came out, I remember thinking to myself, man, he sounds like Drez. Because Drez was out first, right? And if you compare rappers, we talk about distinctive voices all the time, right? And Snoop Dogg has one of the most distinctive voices of all time. I think Drez does too. And I think if you're going to compare anybody's voice to Snoop, because it's really hard to compare anyone's to Snoop, Drez is probably the closest.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
That pitch.
Right.
It's that pitch, bro.
Right. I remember, so A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing in 1991, and we'll talk about this when we talk about skip songs and things like that. I listened to that a lot this week. I'd argue no skips. I'm gonna preface that a little bit and like get back to that later when we talk about the skip song, but I would argue no skips. Like there's not even a skit on there that I don't like. Like there's even they even got a couple skits that I'm like, all right, like the one where they want him to take the cab like into New York and he's like, no, right? Like that, right? That one. And like I would say, like I listened to that, I'm like, well, that's kind of that's on point now, right? I mean, that's on point now. So I kind of like that. But I would argue no skips.
Yeah. Yeah.
From A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. And the time and place we always talk about that was absolutely enormous. Before we get into the good of Black Sheep, Fuzz, what in the world happened with Nonfiction?
For one, it was poorly promoted. It was poorly promoted. I don't think that the label took as much time as they did, I think, with the first project that they put into the second. And I also think too, man, at that time, I think them and the label were pretty probably already on the outs. I feel like when you listen to Nonfiction, first of all, the best song on there is the one that you were playing before we got on. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. That video and that song, classic shit. But I feel like that album, first of all, it's a prime example of when you have a debut project that is so good, no matter how much effort you put into it, nothing's ever going to touch it. Like, that's why we, like kind of like how we always say there'll never be another Illmatic. Like Nas will never make another Illmatic again, right? I think with that album, that Black Sheep album, that first album was so special. And then with the second and the things that they were going through with that label, there's no way they definitely got the sophomore jinx on that one.
When I started listening to Nonfiction this week, because it's been a long time, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing I listened to. Nonfiction I don't really listen to regularly.
Right.
When I started listening to it this week, for the first few songs, I'm like, man, this isn't that bad. Like what, maybe I need to give this another shot, but it is that bad. Like it's not great. Like when
you get further into it.
Yeah. Right. Like that's the thing. Like Autobiographical is a fantastic song. Like Autobiographical, which I think is the first song on Nonfiction.
Yes,
right?
It is. Yeah.
And Without a Doubt's a great song. Like there's some good songs on the album. Like, don't get me wrong. There's some good songs on the album. Here's the thing. Remember we talked about Public Enemy last week and we talked about how Yo Bum Rush the Show, Nation of Millions, Fear of a Black Planet, and Apocalypse 91 all came out within like a 5-year span.
Right.
Nonfiction didn't come out till over 3 years after A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing came out, which tells me that there were a lot of problems with this album coming out, right? Like
Yeah.
it has to be with the label, because if you look at all of the, I mean, you know, the ones in 2000, I mean, all of these albums are on different labels,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
go. We've been doing Mount Rushmore, Fuzz, and I want to do this. I'm actually gonna put like, I did some research on this, so like I'm gonna be able to throw these out quick, but I didn't want to tell you what I wanted to ask you the Mount Rushmore of. So I want you to be surprised of this. All right.
All right. All right.
I'm gonna see the Mount Rushmore of disappointments from elite artists. So like the albums
Ooh.
that came out, like I'm not talking about, you know, like if a bad artist comes out with a bad, you know what I mean? But disappointments from what I would call, or what you would call, an elite artist. And I would put Black Sheep in that mix. And I would put Nonfiction certainly on the Mount Rushmore of biggest disappointments from elite artists. If you could think of your albums, I wrote mine down because I had to like actually like dig into this a little bit. What would yours be?
Oh, I tell you, one album that would definitely have to go up on the Mount Rushmore of disappointments would probably have to be Craig Mack's second album.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard that album,
I don't think I
but
did.
it's oh man. Because if you listen to Project Funk the World, like Easy Mo B by far does not get his roses or flowers. Project Funk the World was such an incredible album. The beats, even though Craig Mack, you know, had like a weird style, it fit that production. The
Right.
second album, he only had one good song, and I think the second album, I want to say it was on Eric B's label. Like Eric
What?
B had a label, yeah,
Okay.
and that album was so disappointing because you really was rooting for Craig Mack, you know, and then
Yeah.
that second album came out, and I was so I was angry. I was so angry.
There's been albums like that where I've gotten angry too. I'm gonna give you 3 and tell me what you think of this. All right.
All right, go
So
for it. Go for it.
so the Dogfather, 100% for me, because like Doggy Style was so unbelievably good, and Doggy Style is a
Right,
top 10 hip hop album for me. Maybe probably a top 10 overall album for me. Wolf in Sheep's Clothing is pretty close. Um,
right.
but Dogfather was not good. Like it just wasn't good. It just and it just it can't. I mean, I know following up, like when you have such an album like Doggy Style, it's hard to follow that up. But at the same time, Tribe did it, Beastie Boys did it, Run DMC did it,
Right,
LL did it,
right.
Public Enemy certainly did it. I mean, there's a lot of these groups that have done it. So, like for I don't think Snoop's had a good album since Doggy Style, honestly. But Dogfather
Yeah.
was really disappointing after Doggy Style came out in 1993. That's number one. Number 2, well, Nonfiction. Number 3, Prince of Darkness by Big Daddy Kane. Like, I love, you know, my thoughts on Big Daddy Kane. I
Yeah.
love Big Daddy Kane, but that album just didn't hold up to what I was used to from him. And look, I'm an Eminem guy, you know that. And I know it's hard. Like, you could remember we talked last week about, you know, we talked about Public Enemy maybe having the best 4-album stretch ever, right? And then, but if you're talking about 3-album stretches, there's a lot of other artists that you can include there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can include Tribe, and you could certainly include Eminem with the first 3 albums, right? With Marshall Mathers, Slim Shady, and the Eminem Show, 3 tremendous albums. And I like some of the stuff he's done since then. I liked, I mean, I like some of his more recent stuff, like some of the songs, like Rap God. The song he has with Kendrick is really good. Love Game, I think is what it's called. But man, Revival was not good. And though, I mean, there's a couple Eminem albums you could probably put in those, but like I remember he just, I don't know, it was almost like he mailed it in a little bit. And I know that wasn't a good time in his life, and I understand that, and that affects things. I do get it. But Eminem's put out a lot of albums. That's my Mount Rushmore of disappointments is Nonfiction, Dogfather by Snoop, Prince of Darkness by Big Daddy Kane, and Revival by Eminem.
Wow. Wow. Hey, quick question. Have you, when you said something about Snoop, I have to ask you this. Have you ever heard the it's the album with Beautiful on it. It's the same album.
Drop It Like It's Hot.
Yo, have you heard that album?
It's all right. It's fine. I'm not a big Pharrell guy. I think he's fine.
Okay.
My favorite Pharrell thing was, remember that first Nerd album when it came out? That thing was fire. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. But I'm not a huge Pharrell guy. I like the song Drop It Like It's Hot. I don't mind that album, but I didn't love it. Like I didn't love it like I love Doggy Style. But do you agree with me on those disappointments, or you got anything else?
Oh yeah, I do. I got Craig Mack on there. I got and see, let's take it to my underground West Coast roots.
All right.
Or I don't want to say roots about my West Coast picks. The third Funk Dubious album. No. Yeah.
No, you.
I know what you're about to say. Oh, no, I was about to say, yeah, dude. I don't know what it is. You know what it is? I was a big Daz Effects fan.
Love Daz.
And Son Doobie, when he came out, he kind of reminded me of like a Mexican version of Daz Effects. So I kind of always had a soft spot for Son Doobie. And then he did that last album, well, not last album. He did like the third album. I think it was called Troubleshooters. And then he did Porn. So
did he really? I did not know. All right.
Yeah, he had a little side movie career for a while, and then he got back into rapping. But that's definitely on the Mount Rushmore. And I got one more. I got another one. All City. Do you remember All City?
I do not.
Oh man, All City was they were on Def Jam, and their first single was really, really dope. And then you get into that album and you're like, what in the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you definitely need to check that out. Check that out.
The one, I mean, look, there's a lot of Public Enemy had a lot of albums later, and obviously Black Sheep had a few and things like that. Like MC Lyte had a lot later and stuff like that. I'm not putting albums like that out because that was, I don't want to say they were past their prime, but it wasn't when they were super hot, right? So I don't want to put that as a disappointment. You know, the one I almost put on my list, and I love LL. LL's my guy, and I love LL, and he was one of the first one, but Walking with a Panther, right? Like that came out in between. I have to look back at the order. I think Walking with a Panther? Walking Like a Panther? You know, the one that had the panther on the front of the cover?
Yeah, I think it's called Walking with a Panther.
Walking with a Panther. I think that had Going Back to Cali on it.
The loudest scratch in
right. Which I like that song. I like that song, but the album wasn't great. And the reason I say it's a disappointment a little bit is just because Bigger and Deffer, Radio, and Mama Said Knock You Out are just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And I think, if I remember correctly, and I don't have the order in front of me, but I think Walking with a Panther came out before Mama Said Knock You Out.
Yeah, it was the album before it, I think.
After Bigger and Deffer. I think
that's
right.
Yeah.
All right. What is the MURC, Fuzz? What's your most unique rap characteristic for Black Sheep?
Yo, you know what? Even though I looked at, like, this is gonna be kind of crazy, but yet simple. Even though I looked at them as a top tier native tongue group, their music was hella relatable because it was about dressing fly.
It was
getting girls, and getting money. And when I say getting money, I don't necessarily mean like on the block hustling, but it was kind of like, it was a mentality of like, if you gotta work to get what you gotta get, then you gotta work and get what you gotta get. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a very blue collarish, swaggish type style, and I think that's what made me like them so much, because what young guy wasn't going to the mall, going to the Chess King, or going to the Gap, getting a button-down paisley shirt and some nice jeans and trying to dress like these dudes and holler at girls. We was wearing bucket hats with the front
Yeah.
turned up. With some of my dudes in the squad were growing little dreads, wearing the Africa medallions. Like that shit was so relatable, and it was just cool. It was like if you weren't a Black Sheep fan, if you didn't have that tape in your car, you were whack. Like it didn't matter who you were. If you didn't know like this or that, or what's the other song in there with Q-Tip?
La Minage.
The flavor of the month. La Minage, Black with No Envy. If you didn't know those songs, what do you say? I failed the SAT, and that's a sad ass truth. Like just like this, yo. I mean, they were very relatable, man. So I got a big spot in my heart for Black Sheep, that first album.
I thought so. I like what you said earlier about Drez's confidence, because it all comes back. Look, I like Mr. Long. I think he changed his name to Long, right? I think later.
Yeah.
He's great too. They're both great, but like Drez was so smooth and so confident. I would say that they were one of the first rap groups, not the first. Like I think of Slick Rick a little bit in this way, but Drez and Black Sheep, they were funny. Like they were kind of funny. They had humor in their lyrics. Strobe Light Honey is hysterical,
hilarious.
Right? Oh my God, like I thought you were somebody else, right? Like I gotta go, right? And I mean,
go.
Right. It's like when that come out, there was humor in the lyrics, and I thought that was cool. Like obviously, Tribe had some of that with I left my wallet in El Segundo. I mean, but I don't think Black Sheep. I mean, you could say this for all the Native Tongues collective, but I don't think Black Sheep took themselves too seriously. And I think that was what kind of made them stand out a little bit.
A lot. That's what made them truly. And not only that, they didn't take themselves seriously, and they didn't really fuck with anybody. Like they didn't bother anybody. They had their own lane. They did what they did, and that was it. And not only that, that first album, that was the first time we heard Chi Ali.
Yes,
that was the first time we Chris Lighty had a verse on the Posse cut. There was a lot of like hidden, like later on they would be bigger names, but there's a lot of hidden superstars and within that camp that blossomed after that album. So yeah, Black Sheep definitely put a mark down in hip hop history, bro.
I'm telling you, no skips on that album, in my opinion.
None. And like you said, the skits were even funny.
They were. I mean, and every song, Similac Child, To Whom It May Concern, I think is great. I mean, that starts, that's Mr. Long's song. I mean, it starts out, right? And like, Have You Any Pool? I mean, everything,
that beat.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right? It's awesome. I mean, everything is there. I mean, we don't really have to talk about the best album on this one because that's an easy one. Obviously, it's A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. How about the best song? This was hard for me. What's your best song?
It's either the Posse cut. Was it Past the 40?
Past the 40?
It's either It's either Past the 40 or Similac Child. It's out of one of those two for me.
I would think, and I don't usually do this, like I don't usually pick the most popular song as the best song, but just the effect The Choice Is Yours, the remix, the revisited, they call it, had on me. And it was freshman year of college. There were like 3 or 4 songs, Fuzz, right? This is 1991. We're both freshmen in college, right? Like there were 3 or 4 songs that you would go to the bar. Like I would go to the bar at Syracuse, the Orange Cafe, it was called. It was the only bar I could get in when I was 18 years old, right? I had a terrible fake ID. They let me in, whatever. And they would play mostly like AC/DC and stuff like whatever. But they would play Jump by Criss Cross, and they would play Jump Around by House of Pain, and they would play The Choice Is Yours by Black Sheep, the remake. Wow. And like people would go nuts. Like people would go nuts when that comes on. And I think it is like VH1 has it as a top 75 song. And I think it's there. I think it's a really good song. I mean, is it the best written song? No, it's not. but I think just the effect that it has, because I always talk about the best song is the one that in my mind has the most effect.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what's your underrated song? And I think we're going to agree on this because I think, you know what I mean? Like the song that just, when you talk about Black Sheep, you're really not talking about it.
I'm gonna have to go with Black with Emmy.
100%. It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's at the end of the album, right? It's a great song. It's almost a perfect song, and it's just Drez dropping bars.
Yeah. And not only that, dropping facts too.
Yes.
Like, and the hook. Oh my God, the hook. Oh man, I can't even remember who's on the hook, but the hook for that song is crazy too.
There are
You
so
remember
many.
that shit?
Yeah, I mean it's I think that's I'm gonna look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure that that is the last song on the album, or the last big song on the album. It's not. I'm wrong, but it's the 17th song, right?
Yeah.
It's called Black with Envy, and Envy is NV, the letters NV, which is no vision. Some of the songs we
Right.
haven't even talked about, Fuzz. But in the meantime,
Yep. Give me the
La Mena-
finger.
yeah, give me the finger, La Menage, Try Counting Sheep, Hose We Knows, Go to
Yes.
Hell. Um, you know, Yes is probably the last song is probably my least favorite song in the whole album. I still don't think it's a skip. What Fuzz, what is your skip song? And if there's going to be a skip song, because like we could basically say the whole nonfiction album is a skip song, but we can't. We got to be more creative than that. What's your skip song?
It would probably have to be the original version of The Choice Is Yours.
Because you just want to get to the new version of The Choice.
You just want to get to the hyper version. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's a better version. And that's
joint.
the only reason. It's definitely my skip song because it's like, well, I'm not going to listen to the same song twice.
Right. Right.
I want to listen to the better version of the song. And the better version of the song is the remix, right?
Right.
There's no doubt about it. But I would say this: if the remix never came out, I wouldn't skip it.
Yeah, no doubt. You're exactly right. Hey, you know what? And what's the name? You said the name of the last song on the album was called Yes, right?
Yes, right.
All right. Next time you listen to that song, listen to the last 2 bars of that song.
Okay.
All right, and just let me know, like, when you hear it, if you caught what he did.
This
is why Drez is a fucking genius.
Yeah, he is. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do we even know, like, I mean, he's obviously, he put out a few albums in the last, 15 years, but the last album was Tortured Soul in 2018. You have any idea what he's doing now?
I know for a while, man, he had issues with the label, and it was like a $70 million lawsuut. I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, but like they were suing the label. Was it Atlantic? I can't really remember what label, but I know it was a $70 million lawsuit on the table. I know he did a side project with I want to say he did something with Jerobi. Like he and Jerobi did a side project that I just stumbled across. Yeah, but pretty other than that, just I think he's been still touring, obviously, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think the label was Polygram. I think the first one was Polygram.
Polygram? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It was Mercury Polygram. And I saw that there's the 50 years of hip hop, obviously, this year. And, they're having that big concert. I think it's next week in New York. I think it's in Queens. And I think Black Sheep is performing. But it's funny. I looked down the list of the performers. You know how like on those festivals, and I think it's kind of like a festival, they have the huge name performers at the top in big letters, and then as you get lower on the flyer, smaller. And Black Sheep's pretty small. Like I was a little disappointed. I was a little disappointed there. Fuzz, when you think of Black Sheep, what do you think
of? Style. They introduced a whole nother style to us, man. Yeah, like, and it's funny too, because we talk about all these groups and East Coast, West Coast, and it's just like when I think about where I was at in my life when I heard a lot of stuff, I was in Georgia, man, and at the time we were so slow and behind with music. Right. Like, you guys from up north, man, y'all were getting shit like so quick, and by the time it came to us, it was played out where y'all were from. So like that whole era of Native Tongue, Black Sheep, De La, Tribe, was dope. But I think out of all of those groups, Black Sheep brought a certain type of style in. You know what I
They
mean? Like it was just so smooth.
they definitely did. And I don't know, when I think of Black Sheep, the first thing when someone says Black Sheep, I just think engine number 9. That's what I think of. I just think because that is so every person who is our age knows if I turn, doesn't matter if they listen to hip hop, doesn't matter. They know
Right,
that song.
right,
They know that line. They've danced to it probably drunk at a bar at some point in their life. You know what I mean? And they've gone like down engine number 9 on the New York Transit, right? Like everybody knows that. I'm not sure everybody would know that that's Black Sheep. Like if I said to 10 people that didn't listen to hip hop who sings this song, I'm not sure they would know. They might not even
right,
know what the song is called, but they're going to know that line 100%,
right. 100%
right?
every time. Every
Yeah.
time.
You
Yeah.
know,
And if they're really our age, when that part comes on, they're gonna drop down to the floor.
absolutely they are. They they
Pick it up, pick it up, pick
pick
it
it up,
up.
right? They definitely, because it was I mean, it was a jam and it got you hype. And I think that those, like
Yeah,
I mentioned, those are the songs that I remember being played at, let's just say, at a non-hip hop bar, right? I mean, a hip hop bar is
right.
different, or bar with a hip hop DJ, excuse me, is different. But some of these bars I was going to, my freshman year of college and things like that, they weren't, it wasn't hip hop central. They were still playing Dancing Queen and AC/DC and stuff
Right,
like that. But what else was playing? I mean, OPP was that part of that. Like
right,
they would play
right.
OPP, and that was kind of, I mean, rap had gone mainstream before that. I mean, that's 1991. Rap had definitely, gone mainstream before that. But I don't know, 1991 was a big year in terms of, I think, crossover. And The Choice Is Yours,
Yeah,
even though I wouldn't say, like, I don't think any of the Native Tongues are crossover, right? Like they have certain songs that are crossover, right? But I wouldn't say Black Sheep's crossover, De La's not crossover, Tribe's not crossover, Jungle Brothers certainly are not. But that song by Black Sheep was crossover. That song became a
oh
pop
yeah,
hit,
for sure.
you know?
Yeah, like once it started getting played on television programs and commercials, that pretty much solidified it.
Yeah,
You know,
it definitely did. Who are we combining them with? I mean, there's the easy ones, right? Because we have Native Tongues. Um,
right,
I originally said like
right.
Dre and Snoop, but I'm not sure you could have really told the been able to tell the difference between Drez and Snoop back then. I mean, you can, because Drez was a little
Right.
more understated. Snoop was kind of in your face a little bit more, but they had similar voices. That might be kind of unique. I was thinking more Black Sheep was more of more storytellers. Um, in a different way. Like they used humor, like we talked about. They were smooth. They were cool. It's a hard one for me. I mean, it's a hard one for me. Who do you got there?
I could see them. I could have saw them doing stuff with West Coast cats. I could see them doing something with the Alcoholics.
Far Side.
I could Far Side, Souls of Mischief.
Yeah,
That would have been really really dope. I think that'd have been really dope, man. That would have been a dope collaboration.
I think Drez doesn't get appreciated much as the rapper as that he is, because he only had one big album, and you don't really he's not on most lists. I mean, he's on my list, but he's
Right.
not on most lists. Um, and in fairness to these lists, like he only had, I know there have been other albums since then, but there was really only two albums, and one did really well and one did not, right? But
Right.
I think Drez is really, really underappreciated as a rapper. I think his flow was great. I think the lyrics were great. What about a little trio of Prodigy, Havoc, and Drez? That would be interesting. Not
Oh,
exactly the
that'd be
same, but
crazy.
New York rappers. One of my big things with Mob Deep is the flow, right? That they both have, and I don't know. That would be a little interesting to me.
Yeah, but it's got to be Prodigy's old flow.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
right,
Yeah,
right, right. Not saying anything's wrong with Prodigy's new flow, but the newer flow that he was doing before he passed on was a tad bit different.
Right. You want to hear
You
something
know.
cool? Sidebar to a sidebar, like we say. My son, my middle son is 16 years old and he's going through like driver's ed right now. Very different. Like when we did it in high school, now I have to take him to like his driving tests and stuff like that. And Jared really likes hip hop. He likes the stuff we listen to more so than the stuff that's out now. And he said he said, "Dad, I got into my driver's ed car and he was listening to Shook One's Part 2." He's like, it was awesome. He's like, I knew the song. The guy thought I was the greatest guy in the world. And you know what he said after that, Fuzz?
What?
He said, and then he started listening to Jay-Z.
Yeah. It's the rock, baby. It's the
rock. So he loved him when he was listening to Mobb Deep, and then Jay-Z came on, and he's like,
oh
man. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, shit.
All right, Fuzz. Let's finish it off with 4 words. All right. We got a good one here.
All
right. You go, and I'll kick the words to you.
All right. We back at it, hitting you again. 4 words coming at you. Spit it off, my friend.
Let's go. Strobe light.
Strobe light. They flicker on and off. It's coming at me. I got a cough. Strobe lights making me sick. It's not fun. Like DMC, I gotta run.
Oh, that's great. And engine.
Engine number 9. Oh, engine number 9. Going down the Carolina line. Powder blue state of mind. Watch your boy spit back on his grind.
Oh, finger.
I know you wanna. You know you wanna, but the middle is a finger I'm gonna give you.
And finish it off with our boy Mr. Long.
Oh, Mr. Long, back with the magic tricks. Can't say his first name because that rhymes with. You got that one, right?
I got that one. Hey, by the way, like I know we've been talking about Drez the whole time. I mean, for most of this. Mr. Long's pretty good though. Like, I mean, he was I wouldn't say he was, the Fife to Drez's Q-Tip, but
no, but he was nice though. I mean,
he was nice, and he had a lot of sexual verses.
Yeah, like that's why he had to change his name, huh?
Yes, he did. I'm a sugar dick dad, Mr. Long, right? Like he would come in, but he was a good rapper, and the rhymes were great.
Yo, he was dope.
And him and Drez fed off of each other well, and they did the thing. Like I don't know. To me, Fife and Tip are the best, duo. Like just the way they fed, the way they fed off of each other and all that. But I don't know. I mean, Drez and Mr. Long were pretty damn good.
Yeah, they were dope. They were really, really dope. They were really slept on duo, man. They were the yin and yang,
Definitely. You got any Fuzz before we sign off? You got any last words on Black Sheep?
Oh man, legends, style, bars, beats, attitude, confidence. That's what Black Sheep was to me. Is to me now still.
I so wish, I wish they had longevity. I really do, because A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing is no matter how you cut it, is a top 25 album of all time in hip hop, in my mind.
For sure.
It's hard to put. I don't know if I would put it in the top 10, but it's not, it's not too far off. Definitely top 25 album of all time in hip hop. And it's, Tribe obviously had longevity. De La had longevity. Jungle Brothers had some longevity too, right? Not as much as Tribe and De La when we're talking about the native tongues. But man, if Black Sheep just had one more album, let alone, maybe even 2, that didn't have to be Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, because that's so good, right? I mean, that's just so good. But if they had something that came up along those lines, I think we'd be talking about them as one of the better groups of all time. Like we'd be putting them in the conversation with Public Enemy and Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul and Beastie Boys, Run DMC. We'd be putting them up there. It's hard to do that off of one good album, even though it's a sensational album.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And and when you listen to that album today, it's really impressive as it was when it came out in '91. So
the production quality is pretty good.
Yeah.
again, I mean, look, we had the same skip, and the only reason we had the skip is because there's a remix of the same song on the album. But other
Right.
than that, there's zero skips. It's
No, there's
it's
not at all. Yeah, there's no skips.
it's a sensational album that probably isn't talked about. It probably isn't talked about as much. And look, what might be interesting too. It's hard for us to do it because if Nonfiction had come out before A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, kind of like think about Yo Bum Rush the Show. I love Yo Bum Rush the Show, right? I definitely do. People's Instinctive Rhythm, like both great albums, but if Yo Bum Rush the Show had come out after Nation of Millions, we might have been like, yo, you know what I mean? Like that type of thing.
Right,
so I'm really curious.
right.
I'm really curious. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Nonfiction. It has some good songs. Don't get me wrong. But man, if Nonfiction came out first and was followed up by A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, I wonder if we'd be talking about it differently.
Yeah, I'm sure we would. And who knows what would happen after that, like with their careers and longevity, like you were saying. That probably would have been a game changer.
Right? You threw like The Choice Is Yours on Nonfiction, and then you have A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing come out afterwards. I'm just, spitballing here. I think I think we'd be talking about them differently, and I think they probably would have had a longer career.
Yep. You're right.
So,
yep.
But we'd like to thank you all for tuning in to this latest episode of Hip Hop Reminiscence. Remember, our website is hiphoprem.com. Our Twitter handle is hiphopremin. You can see us on TikTok as well. Fuzz, tell them where they can listen to you.
Go to fuzzjacks.bandcamp.com, fuzzjacks on Instagram, fuzzjacks1 on TikTok, northjacks on Twitter, and fuzzjacks on Facebook. Holla at your boy. Oh, Steve McQueen freestyle coming soon. Make sure y'all get that when it drops later this week on Bandcamp.
I will not be coming out with any freestyles. You will not have to get that. So just make sure you get Fuzzes, and we'll be all good. Hey, for Fuzz Jackson, this is Joe Rosen. We'll be back soon. Take care.
Peace.